You're listening to Positive Vibes with Shane Nikolic, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. Positive Vibes with Shane Nikolic. Welcome to Positive Vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And this morning, it didn't work out quite as I thought it would. And, something came up, and I have no guest today. So I was just going to read a little bit out of the Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard. Go back to my old standby. But this book, it's like I've said before, it's what got me fired up, what got me thinking, about writing my own book, writing my own manifesto. And, so that's what I did. I wrote and published a book, and that got me going, got me fired up, just continuing on this trek, continuing on this path, this journey. Suppose I should have gotten comfy before the show, but oh well, whatever. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to read out of this second little part of the beginning section of the book. It's called On Fear. And, it's like, you think, okay, fear, that's sort of a negative thing, but, this is a very good section of the book. We have to, move through this stuff, move through this sort of negative stuff to get to the positive. And it's like, gotta, whatever. Here we go. On fear. He who is brave is free. And that's a quote from Seneca. Fear rips us from freedom. It is the destroyer of greatness. We know this, and we know we should tame our mind in order to defeat fear. Yet look at all the adults who act like powerless children and avoid the life they want because of fear. The socially oppressed say, well, you don't understand. People are always holding me back, and I am afraid to chase my dreams because others will judge and reject me. And the self-oppressed say, you don't understand. I can't chase my dreams because I might fail. I might not be good enough. These are the debilitating thoughts of the fearful. Should we wish to live a vibrant life, we must transcend such childishness and look fear in the eye, recognizing it as a mental construct that we alone fuel with small thoughts that betray our magnitude. It is the first realization of the mindful human. Unless we are being chased by a deadly animal or deranged human, or face imminent physical harm like falling to our death, fear is just bad management of our mind. Today we are faced with a multitude of placators and licensed professionals, many of whom have never actually transformed lives, who try to fool us into believing fear is a positive emotion in life. They say fear is natural, or a little fear will motivate you to try harder, or fear builds character. But in most cases, this is wrong. Fear is the thief of humanity's light. It may be a necessary instinct that causes us to make smart choices to flee from pain, danger, or struggle, but we must be wary of it. More people find harm in life because of fear than benefit by it. Those who seek to make fear a positive thing are justifiers, not sages. They aren't champions of consciousness. Attempting to conceal fear as a friend is like forcing a wolf to be a pet. Soon, the pet will eat us alive. Declaring that we will master our fears is the first great leap toward freedom. Our vitality, growth, and destiny all demand that we can topple fear. As so much hangs in the balance, let us better understand what fear really is. Fear is the human motive of aversion. Fear doesn't help us commit to higher aims. It doesn't help us imagine greatness. Its sole aim is immediate release from threat, strain, or pain. It often becomes a, by all means necessary, approach to controlling any given situation so that the body, but most often the ego, can feel safe and unchallenged. Fear was given to us as a motive to avoid physical harm and death. That is it. We are the ones who have perverted it into a tool for the ego's protection. Almost all the fear we experience today has nothing to do with physical threat. We have taken this impulse for safety and bastardized it into ego-driven desires to feel more emotionally comfortable. We hacked its short-term nature into a long-term tool to avoid difficult circumstances in order to satiate our base desires for approval. Fear has become a crutch for emotional weakness, and as with all crutches, we shall fall slave to its use unless we once more condition our strength. Most people do not like to discuss fear because it inevitably exposes the ugly truth that we are more often fleeing from ourselves than from actual danger. Fleeing from ourselves than from actual danger. The modern worries that we succumb to are simply byproducts of our own misuse of this primitive motive. Almost all fear we experience today and its resultant cowardly thinking and behavior is just imagined social drama created by unchecked mental impulses and conditionings. We are afraid of being rejected, isolated, or abandoned, not of being eaten alive. And those kinds of social fears can be overcome by willful practice. When someone says, "I am fearful of public speaking," they do not mean they are worried someone in the audience is going to attack them physically. Rather, they mean they are afraid of failure. Their issue is a challenge not of real safety, but of emotional comfort. If they were speaking more accurately, they would say, "I am afraid of how I will feel emotionally and whether I will live up to my expectations of myself and the expectations of those who put me on stage. I am afraid of how I will look. I am afraid that I may not do well. I am afraid I will lose my place or draw a blank. I am afraid I will not be respected." Notice the order of these comments. It is not fear is running me, it is I am afraid. The I is leading the way. The ego is in charge. Naturally, we all struggle with free self-expression, and we all want to do our best. We would love the power to be ourselves on the world stage at all times. Our great challenge is that in an unconditioned mind, fear is louder and more intense and immediate than our desire for self-mastery and for contribution to others. Fear steals thunder from the more noble drive to ascend to our higher selves and make our greatest difference. We are more alert to the sound of dogs barking than angels singing. What can be done? The cost of fear. To tame fear, we must first recognize its horrid effects on our lives. What comes of us when we are motivated by fear? We lose our emotional center and mental character. Our thoughts become frazzled and riddled with anxiety. All conscious thinking, intelligence, and behavior narrow to self-protection, limiting our capabilities to be open and strong. Our natural tendencies for genuine self-expression are paused, and our ability to act to fulfill our dreams is paralyzed. When we allow fear as a constant in our lives, our ambitions and behaviors become small and constrained. We become timid and stressed. We withdraw. We become cowards. Life's energy entropies. All things trapped in the cage of fear smother and die quickly. This is not a philosophical discussion. Real, tangible harm comes from allowing fear to overrule our drive to personal freedom. Some people become slaves to fear that they constantly feel powerless, inferior, ready to give up. They allow others to hurt them because they do not speak up for themselves. They quietly play it safe, never showing themselves to the world. These are the meek who stood to inherit the earth, but never rose to claim it. The sullen who watched atrocities wear on without a word of defiance. Good people stand at the sidelines of history and never make their mark. People lose their businesses because fear stops them from changing and innovating. Marriages end in divorce because one or both spouses are afraid to open up, to communicate, to be vulnerable or sexy or honest. On a societal level, all the worst atrocities of mankind stem from fear. Those compelled by fear become terrified, distrustful, and often hateful of other people. Their fear gives rise to an overweening self-protection to such a degree that they want power over others. Their ego is so fiercely challenged by the rise of people unlike themselves that they become the bigots and tyrants and sometimes grand-scale murderers whose unchecked fear burns into a perilous soup of unspeakable actions against humanity. These are the Caligulas, Mussolinis, and Bin Ladens of the world, who hate others because they fear those who stand in their way to power. They are the Robespierres, Eichmanns, Songs, and Khomeini's, the Hitlers, Stalins, and Amins. It's the same story over and over again. Those with power are so plagued by insecurity that, rather than directing their strengths to lift everyone up, take comfort and pleasure in pushing down those who are unlike themselves, those they do not understand or value. There can be no doubt that whether in daily life or on the world stage, fear is the great usurper of progress and personal freedom. It is sad but real. It is a sad but real fact that history is littered with good men and women who simply let the motive of fear drive their lives. Nothing ever cued them to right their mind, or they never chose to work hard to condition their thoughts to tame fear, to choose consciousness over the ease of running away from life. Aversion versus ascension. Fear rules us only if we let it. In almost all cases, it is something that we can choose to activate or not activate. We can choose to run or not, even if our impulse is blaring at its highest decibel to run. How else does the firefighter enter the inferno to save people? How does the captain of a ship give the lifeboats to the others? How do the anxious still share their voice with the world? Perhaps we don't feel like we can make this choice to be more brave than fearful, but eventually we can all become masters of our impulses. A great maturity opens in the human psyche when we accept that we can control our impulses by conditioning our thoughts, and that we alone are responsible for our emotions and reactions in life. It is difficult to accept, but no less true. If fear is winning in our lives, it is because we simply keep choosing it over our other impulses to be strong or bold or great. This is the story of the stay-at-home mom who wants to go back to work, but didn't apply because she is letting her fear of her own worth hold her back. It's the employee who wants to ask for a deserved raise, but feels afraid she might be denied. It's the young man who feels inspired to try out for a musical, but worries what his friends will think. It's the obese person too embarrassed to enter the gym, even though he knows his health and very existence is on the line. Most adults understand that they are making a choice to let fear win in any given situation. Ask an honest person, did you know you were acting from fear the last time you stopped behaving as yourself or working towards something you wanted? And did you know you had another choice at that time? The honest person will say, yes, I knew I had a chance to speak up for myself or to be more courageous, but I was scared. I didn't want to be judged or hurt, so I chose the easy route. Let us be clear once more that if we are not free, if we are not genuinely expressing our full personality and pursuing our true desires, it is because we are choosing to act from aversion rather than ascension. Thus, our grand battles in life are between our desire for freedom and the fearful impulses that destroy desire. The juxtaposition could be no less stark. At any moment, we are acting from a state of mind driven by fear or freedom, and the stakes are high. All advancement in our maturity and growth as individuals and societies hinges on our motives. Either fear will win or freedom will win. Let that phrase ring true in our minds as we carry out our ideal lives. Fear wins or freedom wins. And so let us ask ourselves, will my life be about aversion or ascension? The former is a life motivated by fear, a small life that turns from hardship toward short-term safety, self-protection, and egotistic ease. The other is a life motivated by freedom, a reason to act from our true humanity toward long-term growth, authentic self-expression, and enlightened effort. One is the conditioning of weak and constrained and conforming and suffering beings. The other, the conditioning of strong, spontaneous, independent, and fulfilled beings. One reaches us a lowly and often pathetic impulse. The other requires our full consciousness and mental devotion toward courage and self-mastery. The social conditioning of fear. Why are some people more driven by fear than freedom? It can only be because in the past they were conditioned to be fearful, either by those around them or by their poor application of mental faculties. There is no genetic curse or personality trait that permanently condemns one person to fear more than another. Even a genetic predisposition for anxiety can ultimately be flipped on or off by mental conditioning. We are not slave to our history. We can be freed by our conscious thoughts and disciplined habits. Let us begin with understanding how fear is socially conditioned. Fearful people tend to be shaped by past interactions. They were pushed and molded into being timid, weak, and afraid by the critical parents, bullying peers, or small-minded teachers and bosses. The people around them were always cautioning or harming them, and so they became habituated to the impulse of fear. It came up so often that they got used to it. From a fearful past, they have generated a fear-driven present. This is not to blame our past or excuse our fears. When people choose fear as an adult, they are choosing not to manage or overcome it. This is difficult work for many because fear has become their default impulse. The thoughts ruling their minds or their self-talk replay the cutting barbs of the critics and misguided caretakers who once demeaned them. The good news is we can change this conditioning. When we awaken to responsibility, we realize that nothing can be done about our past but to see it from a new perspective. We can release ourselves from its grip. We cannot control how others treated us yesterday, so let us work instead on understanding how we are currently dealing with those who stoke our fear today. The great efforts to move our lives forward always come down to a new moment when we interrupt our fear and activate our freedom by choosing how to feel, interpret, and direct our lives. Part of the mastery of life comes from anticipating that the same kinds of characters that sought to instill fear yesterday shall be met again today or tomorrow. Knowing this, we become wary of people who chip away at our freedom. These are the worriers, weaklings, and in rare cases, the wicked. Let's see. I'm just going to skip ahead a bit here. Let's see. Okay, hopefully this doesn't skipping ahead. Hopefully this doesn't screw it up, but yeah, I'm skipping ahead. At any rate, the mental projection of fear. While many people in our lives might seek to stoke our doubts and fears, the vast majority will seek to support us. More will seek to pull us up than push us down. People know that in allowing us to chase our dreams unencumbered, they are silently giving themselves permission to pursue their own. No matter how many bores and bastards we meet in life, we must remember that we have friends all around. We mustn't hesitate to ask for their help, inspiration, and wisdom. The hard truth of life is that our fear is often socially cued and conditioned. It is more often a result of dereliction of our own minds. We misuse our mental faculties by barely using them at all. We have the means to extinguish our fears, but we lack discipline in using it. Like having the extinguisher in our hands as our home burns, but choosing not to use it because we'd have to aim. How often do we sense worry, but rather than combating it with conscious thought, let it burn? How often do we so obsess on negative things that they grow into a great scorching fire or anxiety? For many people, this has happened unchecked so often and for so long that they are no longer aware of the fact that predictable thought patterns, all of which they can anticipate and control and transform, are causing them to be fearful. They just feel afraid all the time and think there is nothing they can do about it, like a sad child holding a burst balloon she herself popped. Let us learn now, once and for all, to anticipate how our minds cultivate fear, just as we can expect the worriers, weaklings, and wicked to derail us if we are not cautious. We can prepare for how our minds will tear us from happiness and progress. Most of the fear we feel in life is simply anxiety arising from our anticipation of two kinds of pain that change might bring: the pain associated with loss or hardship. The first, loss pain, is a thought pattern in which we worry that we will lose something we cherish if we take any given action. If we fear changing jobs, it is because we don't want to lose our compensation, our friendships with certain coworkers, our corner office. Yeah, corner office. I work in a dish pit. I'm not afraid of losing that. This thought pattern plays out in millions of subtle decisions throughout people's lives. We think, if I go on a new diet, I'm afraid I'll lose the joy. Sorry, I'm still back on that losing the dish pit. If we go on a new diet, I'm afraid I'll lose the joy I feel in eating my favorite foods. If I quit smoking, I'll lose that 20 minutes of peace I get by going outside and taking long drags. So I'm afraid to quit. If I leave the jerk, I'm afraid I'll lose love in my life and never find anyone else to be with. The only way to combat this thought pattern is to analyze it closely, then reverse it. Once we sense that we are anticipating loss, we must question whether or not it is true. The more we look for evidence of our fears, the more we realize they are often faulty, quick assumptions of a tired or undirected mind. The small, poorly conditioned person may guess that things will be bad, whereas an intelligent, self-aware person may come to a logical conclusion based on real-world evidence or thoughtful principle. The person who examines their fear of dieting, quitting a bad habit, or leaving a bad relationship comes to realize there is always less to lose than to gain in making healthy decisions for themselves. This reframing requires intelligence and optimism. Once we question the assumptions causing us anxiety, we should explore the opposite of our worries, focusing as obsessively as possible on what might be gained if we changed. What if we begin the new diet and find new foods and recipes we love? A little side note, for instance, I started this new diet, the Best Bet diet for people with multiple sclerosis, when I started the diet, I was looking at the sauces and flavorings available there at work, and I work in a sushi restaurant, so I'm looking at the soy sauce. Well, this diet is no soy. Then you got the spicy sauce, which is mayonnaise, egg based, therefore a dairy product. No dairy is, part of this diet. Anyway, so I ended up going with a plain bowl of rice and a plain, chunk of salmon, or a plain chicken breast and rice, and not putting any flavoring in it. I found out I loved it, It's been so long since I actually tasted, the actual taste of plain chicken and plain rice, and it was like awesome. Anyway, now I'm going with a little flavoring that, just spices that don't have the soy or the dairy. Yeah, at any rate, the new diet rocks. I love it. And, I just had to try it. All right, now to find my spot. Okay, what if we quit smoking and learn new practices that give us even more relaxation? Okay, a little side note on that one. I quit smoking back in 2013 after, 20 some years smoking and smoking cigarettes. And, it's just like I have a lot more time, I'm not spending so much time out there, it's this relaxing time smoking cigarettes. And, it's like, I'm sure my employer loves it because, I tend to take a lot less breaks, and my energy level is a lot higher, and so I've found that fear of quitting smoking was, pretty much nothing. I just moved right through it. At any rate, what if in a new romantic relationship we finally find joy? We should certainly visualize these outcomes as much as we visualize. we should certainly visualize these outcomes as much as we visualize dark scenes of loss. Dream up and focus on the positive. for it is much more useful than the long nightmares of negativity. Yeah, and I can speak on that one, going through those long nightmares of negativity, just for a long time, it was like after the divorce, it was like there was that long period of loss, the feeling of loss and negativity, and and there's, it's like a move through that, moving on to better things, flipping, like was mentioned earlier in this chapter, or this section, flipping the switch, from that negative to the positive, and, getting out of those long nightmares of negativity and focusing on the positivity, what I'm grateful for. Like I've said in the past, the opposite of gratitude is depression, and one form or basis of depression that I can speak on is fear, the topic of this section. But at any rate, the second thought pattern that causes us to fear change is related to the anticipation of hardship. We're scared to do something because we think it will be too hard on us. We worry we're not capable, worthy, or ready, and we allow that worry to stop us. So many times in my life I can speak on that one. But isn't this a pathetic use of mental powers? Isn't it true that with enough time, effort, and dedication, we can learn most of what we need to succeed? Isn't it true that most great accomplishments were achieved by people who at first had no idea what they were doing, who had to first endure years of struggle to bring their dream to fruition? Let's not forget that we didn't always know how to ride a bike or use a computer or make love, but we figured it out. Humans did not know how to land on the moon, but we decided it was a worthwhile endeavor, and so we struggled for a decade to puzzle it out. We became capable of the impossible. This, thus, is the story of the individual and the entire species. And yet look how small we let our minds be in so many cases. We think, I'm scared to go on a diet because I don't know if I can handle learning all these new recipes fast enough, or endure a 30-minute workout. I'm afraid of quitting smoking because it will be hard to know that what to do with my hands without a cigarette in them. I'm too freaked out to leave my bad relationship because going online to find someone new sounds like a hassle. We are more than these small thoughts. At some point, maturity will pounce on us and ask, are you not more than your tiny worries about inconvenience? Isn't a better life worth some struggle? The only way to break these thought patterns is to question and reverse them. If we simply take a moment to contemplate, we can realize we have learned and endured more difficult things in the past, and we can learn and endure what is needed now. The tools to manage the difficulties of life are within. Let me reiterate, the tools to manage the difficulties of life are within. And perhaps we can imagine ourselves actually enjoying the struggle versus fearing it. We can think, I'm looking forward to learning to cook new foods. I'm looking forward to working out with my friends. I'm excited to quit smoking because I can see myself getting up these stairs without being winded and having a long life free of addiction. I'll tell you what, before I quit smoking, I never said, I look forward to quitting smoking because I see myself running unfathomable distances. And now I run marathons and ultras and, just long distances that were totally unfathomable before. I'm thrilled to look for someone who is more right for me than my last relationship, to find real love, to enjoy life with my soulmate. Let us fire our enthusiasm, knowing that the learning journey toward freedom can be exciting. We must trust this. We can learn and we can grow, and we must begin now, for destiny favors the bold. Let me reiterate that. We must trust this. We can learn and we can grow, and we must begin now, because destiny favors the bold. To some, this sounds like mere positive thinking. And what of it? Shall we continue thinking negatively? What good will come from focusing on all the loss and hardship we might experience in life? There is no self-awareness in letting fear reign because of our own mental sloth. We have the personal power to wield our thoughts more forcefully in the daily fight against our fears. Our thoughts will free us or destroy us. Wow. That's a powerful sentence. Our thoughts will free us or destroy us. Maturity comes in understanding that it is our choice alone to move toward freedom. Okay, here we are at the end of this section. Perfect timing, just about. Dealing with physical fear. It seems impossible that all our fears can be conquered by mindset alone. But they can be. Some ask, what about those real physical impulses that seem so uncontrollable? Can we also master them? How does the lion tamer walk into the pride's den, unafraid? How does the public speaker stand in front of thousands without becoming ill with self-doubt? How does the executive make the decision her whole team is too afraid to make? Practice. The lion tamer was once afraid, but he entered the den, and over time, he became unafraid. The public speaker took the stage, and with time, became uncomfortable. The executive made decision after decision, until even the big calls became easier. We can learn from these examples and choose to face what we fear. We can choose the courage to put ourselves in the vicinity of the things we fear over and over again until we grow more comfortable and then confident. Let us reawaken to a life unbounded, finding inspiration in the fact that humans throughout the millennia have learned to overcome their fears. They changed how they reacted to fearful impulses. They took a deep breath, contemplated whether or not their fears were rational, and visualized the growth they would experience by moving forward. They took those steps forward again and again until they found that their fear was no longer so powerful or even present. This is called self-mastery. Let us learn from them and put these practices into our own lives. Let us choose to master our minds and demonstrate more power over our fears. As mature and bold adults, we can refuse to shrink from those things that might cause us anxiety or hardship. We can reach toward what is always pulsing in the background, that equally powerful impulse, that sure and solid will toward personal freedom. We repeat over and over, I won't let others stoke fear in my heart. I choose to remain true to who I am and where my dreams direct me, no matter the hardship I might incur. I remember it always. Fear wins or freedom wins, and I choose freedom. And that is just another section of this powerful book. Well, as I see it, it's powerful, and it's like, that's my opinion. If if you have another opinion, maybe buy the book or read it all for yourself. and maybe I'll come up with a different opinion. But anyway, how I see it, the Motivational Manifesto is so motivating, and it's like, it's just pure fire. It's either, like he says there, just plain and simple, either fear wins or freedom wins. And that's what it boils down to. It's like I wrote my book, and it was like I'm going through this publishing process and had a little fear, and I'm like, no, it's this is what I need to do. This is, the next step. This is what I need to do. I'm free to do the essentially freedom. I was going toward the freedom. I'm free to do this. I need to get my story out there and write my book, put out my autobiography. So, I just carried on through the process and work toward that freedom instead of letting any fear hold me back, any fear of what people might say about my book, any negative comments, negative reviews, which I actually on Amazon, I did have one negative review on there, and but it's like, I never even replied to that review. I just let it go, whatever. I left it there. I could have deleted it, but I just left it there, and I had no fear over that one negative comment, nothing, no anxiety over it, no fear, no nothing, just, oh well, whatever, there it is, let them be, let that comment be, and move forward. That's what it's all about, just not letting fear win, and instead letting freedom win. The freedom as a human being, just to live a free life, without that constraint of fear, holding me down, holding me back, keeping me restrained. Thinking back, didn't let those projections, that I was hearing, when I woke up from my coma, those projections I was hearing that, I may never walk again, going to be in this wheelchair the rest of my life. It's like I didn't let those projections, any fear over that, keep me down. It's like, okay, well, let's, work toward freedom. And, so eventually, it took a little while, but I got out of that wheelchair. And it's like, other freedoms, just have to move through that fear, and, everything gets better. Life gets better. I was, for myself, smoking cigarettes, I started smoking at a young age at 12, and, it felt comfortable. So, I just continued doing it. And then when I was like, 38, I think is when I quit. 38, quit smoking cigarettes, and, just felt free, the first day or two, maybe a few days, it was like, I had that little urge, well, actually, when I quit smoking cigarettes, I went to vaping, but, I wanted to go back to cigarettes, and I'm just like, no, I can't. I gotta stick with this. I was going to wean myself off, but then ended up not being that way. But when I did actually finally quit that, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm free of, that nicotine, free. I was just free. I could breathe a lot better. For myself, I found it that way. When I quit smoking, I started breathing a whole lot better. But then when I quit vaping, it was like, wow, just total freedom. I could breathe a whole lot better. And, now that I'm highly active and run, it's like all the time I'm just breathing better. I feel a lot more energy. I feel just a million times better. And same thing when I was drinking and doing drugs. Started drinking and doing drugs at that same old age of 12, and carried on for 4.5 years. During that time, it was like I just got it. It became, that was life. I did it because I wanted to feel comfortable. It was one reason, and it's like just I didn't, never wanted to quit because the fear of being uncomfortable, not doing it. And so I just kept on doing it. And, finally was forced to break through that fear. And, nothing but freedom since then. For the past 28 plus years. But it's just fear. You gotta move through it. Sure, there's always a little bit of fear, but just keep moving through it. Fear of doing new things. Before I started doing this, before I got into this whole social media gig and started following Gary Vee and Brendon Burchard and the other guys I follow, or the other motivational people I follow, when they talk about doing a podcast, I was like, okay, before that it was like, okay, maybe I'll do that someday, but no, I don't know. I don't feel like putting myself out there like that. And then it's like, okay, well, I got to the point where it's like, okay, it's part of the journey, so here we go. And I don't know if that fear had any real grounds to it or not, since since I wanted to go into radio in my teens and was actually on the radio in my teens for a few times anyway, as a DJ on the Country Gold Network. Or at least helping out anyway, momentarily. Okay, but I guess that's it for today's show. Just gotta recognize the fear and move toward freedom. That's where I'm at anyway, and that's what I'd like to tell everyone is move through the. If you're in fear right now, just honestly look at it, recognize it, work through it, and move toward freedom. Freedom is phenomenal. Life is phenomenal, and life with freedom is a whole lot better than life with fear. Okay, that's about it, and that's my show for today. So thank you for joining me on another edition of Positive Vibes. Making gratitude, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And if I couldn't chuckle and laugh, what's the point of being positive? So there you go. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week. All right. I'm out. Ciao.